All right, I am recording. And good morning. Today we're going to continue starting our Unity project off. I'm going to continue working together with you on getting it off the ground, basically some fundamental foundational things in there. We have 3 more scripts that I gave you the other day. I gave you 5 scripts. We went over 2 last time. I'm going to go over the other 3, and we're going to put those into the scene that we're building. I also have added a few things to download on Moodle. So there is a basic skyboxes zip, a big tree creator, and a starter sounds that I want you to download, and I'm going to show you how to put those into your project. So we're going to work on our Unity projects. I asked you to get some Megascan surfaces and objects to download those so that you can have those to work with and add to your scene. I have some that I did for mine that are the same ones that I used in my other scene. So I'm going to bring those in and add some different things. I'm going to change the aesthetics a little bit by adding some more grass and stuff. So mine's not going to be all snow, but I am going to add some of those things into it. And we're going to be creating a terrain today. And we're going to be doing a pickup dynamic today. So collecting objects. So let me go ahead and download these also. And I'll go to my downloads folder. So I want to talk about today how to bring in resources to your Unity project. We brought in the custom package that I had you download, but I want to show you where you can download other packages because you're going to want them for your terrain, and how to put these into your project. So if you have a package, that means it's a special zip that was made for Unity. And so it's going to say Unity package file. But these are not packages. These are just zips of folders that have things inside of them. So I can just unzip them by extracting all. And it's going to be basically just a folder that will have some assets in it. And that's what they're called in Unity. Like the things that you're putting into your game, whether it's model, like meshes, they call them meshes in Unreal, but other people call them models. Whether it's models or sounds or images or skyboxes, all of these things are considered assets in Unity. And they go in your assets folder. So when we are inside of Unity and we import a package of some kind, it's going to go in this assets folder right here. It'll automatically, the standard assets package was put into that assets folder when I imported it as a custom package. But you don't have to do it that way. You can just put something in your assets folder. You can create folders inside of Unity like I've been doing by right-clicking and creating a folder. But you can also just add a folder into your Unity project. That is another way of importing something. So if I go out into my file structure, let's go here in this window, I'm going to go to where my project is. So all of my project stuff is in my class folder inside of my Unity demos folder. And so I made a project for the class here that is called, let's see, what are we in? Unity class project. And actually, I may not have made it in this folder. Let me just take a look back here. Okay, here it is. It's I made a folder called Unity Project Class, and then here's the Unity class. So I can see in the upper left of my Unity what the project is and what the scene is. So it's Unity class project, Unity scene start. That's what I'm in right now. And if I open up, if I go find that Unity project class, or the project folder, which is this one. If I'm not sure whether that's the project folder, I'll double click into it. And if the first thing you see is an assets folder, you know it's a Unity project. If you look down at the bottom, you're going to see something about Unity class project, right? So, that's a Visual Studio folder. But when I see this, when I see assets, library, logs, object, I know that I'm inside of a Unity project. And it's really important because people don't understand this when they start working with game engines, because they're used to working with just one file and you open it and it's a Photoshop file and it opens it. That's not the way game engines work. They don't have one file. They have thousands of files, and they have them in a folder structure like this. And the same thing with Unreal. We talked about this with Unreal. So this shouldn't be like a new concept for you guys. So it's really important that if you zip up your project, to back it up so that if you come in here to work one day and someone's on your machine and they won't get up, well, you should have backed up your project and have it on a drive so you can go to another machine and put it there and open it on a different machine, right? That's what you would do if you wanted to be able to come in here and work anytime and not have a problem. Keeping it on one machine, not a good idea. So you guys should be weekly backing your projects up just so that it's safe, so that if something happens to your project and it gets corrupted, you'll have a backup of it. But at least also, if you want to be able to move it to different machines, you need to back it up. And you need to back it up as a zip file, because if you don't zip it, you may drop files when you're transferring it onto another drive. And so you want to make sure you don't drop files. Make sure you save it, you close it, and then zip it up. And so you have to find the project file. And that's what I've done here. I've found my project file. So if I'm going to zip this, I'll go one level up, I'll right click this, and I'll compress to zip file. And I've never had that be a problem, right? I've used Unity, I think, for like 15 years now. I've used it a long time and I've taught it at like 4 different universities. So I know this program pretty well, and I know that if you zip it up, you won't have a problem backing it up. So try to do that so you don't run into any issues with losing your work or anything. And then also you need to know where the project is so that if you have some files that you want to put into it, that you can find the assets folder, because that's where you're going to copy it to. So here's my assets folder. I go into it, and these are all the things that I've added to my project. Some of the stuff there is stuff that Unity added, but a lot of this is stuff that I've added. And so I want to add these new folders that I downloaded from Moodle. So they're in my downloads folder. I've unzipped them, and I want to add them into here so that I can import them, basically. That's what I'm doing. I'm importing them to the project. So I'm going to just drag them down here to the, I don't want to drag them into other folders because then I might, lose track of them. I want them to be at the assets level. So child to the assets folder. And so I'm going to take this Skyboxes basic that I've unzipped, and I'm just going to drag it over here and drop it in there. And I'm also going to do that with Tree Creator. And I'm going to do it with starter sounds. So now they're inside of my project. And if I go back over and click on Unity, you're going to see it start importing all of those things that I just copied into there. So that's how you can import something into Unity. It's a way I use a lot, because it's just, I can keep everything organized. But so that's one way. And now if I look over here, I can see I've got Skyboxes basic, and inside of it, it's got another folder, and then it's got all of these Skybox materials. And if I go into the textures folder, I can see that each one of those materials has 6 textures associated with it, because it's a box, and boxes are 6-sided. So there are different kinds of skies that you can make in Unity and also other game engines. So one of them is a sky box, and it's literally a big box that sits around the entire terrain and environment, and it's got a texture map on each side. And when it renders it, it renders it in such a way that you can't tell it's a box. Like it gets rid of the seams. If the skybox is made correctly, if all the textures are seamless. It's hard actually to make a skybox. To try and get those so that you don't see any of those seams, it's actually difficult. It's way easier to do an equirectangular skybox like the one I showed you last time. Ones that's made from a 360 camera or from a site like Blockade Labs AI skyboxes, because those are going to be seamless, way easier. Yeah.
Where do you keep your Megascans models folder? Is that also within like the main project file?
So for me, I decided not to import directly into my Unity project. So I have a folder. That's a good question. I have a folder in my outside of my projects, but inside of my class folder that I'm using for that. Megascan models, or actually I was using Megascan models. I'm using Quixel Bridge textures folder that inside of it has a Megascans models and a surfaces folder. And inside of those, I have the ones that I'm downloading. And the reason I did that is because I don't actually want everything that Megascans has given me And if I just import it directly as into my project, it's going to bring everything in, and that's going to make my project bigger. And it may not seem bigger with an individual Megascan, but when you add all the Megascans and all the other packages and stuff that I'm eventually going to add into here, it's going to make the project bigger and bigger. So if I can put them in a halfway point, and then I'm just going to pull the FBXs and the textures in as I need them. It's an extra step, takes a little longer, but it's going to save my project being too big. So that's how these skyboxes work, and you don't actually have to know that per se, because you're just going to plug these materials in. They're already made for you as skyboxes. And these are basic ones, right? I would prefer in your final Unity project to actually have a custom skybox that you make with Blockade Labs, or you get somewhere else that's much nicer than what these would be. Like we did with the Unreal projects. And you could use the same skybox that you used in the Unreal project too. So you probably have that just about already done. And the way these basic skyboxes would be plugged in is the same way I plug this one in. If I go to Window, Rendering, Lighting, that's where my skybox stuff is. It's on the Environment tab, and that's where my skybox material gets plugged in. Before, when I clicked over here on the little circle, I didn't have a lot of skyboxes available. But now that I've imported these other ones, they're actually in there, and I can find them there. I could also just, rather than searching through that long list, I could just go and drag some of these skyboxes onto this material, because these are all materials at this level, and the one that in the folder that I brought in. So this, for instance, is a very nice sunny material. And if I drag it on there, then I can see what that material looks like. And you can see it doesn't look like a box, but it's a box. And it changed my lighting completely. And so we could drag several of those onto right here, where it says skybox material. So let's try this one. It's an alternate sun one. And we have this one. It's got a little lighter, wispier clouds. You got this one that's overcast. Completely changed my lighting. You've got this one, another one that's overcast. You got an eerie skybox, which is also overcast, but has like a blue tint to it. And you have a dawn dusk type of skybox. So, and actually you have a moon and stars skybox. Which, it's kind of hard to, probably almost impossible to see unless I turn the lights all the way out. But those are all there, and you could use one of those if you want to. But you know, I have two custom ones that I brought in, and I can use those. This one is a free one from Adobe that if I want to use it in my skybox material, which requires a cube map, because I set the shader to be skybox cube map. And by the way, if in those other ones that I showed you, they're not using a cube maps, they're using a six-sided. So six texture images for the box. It's a six-sided. But you would not use that with one of these equirectangular ones that you make into a cube map. So if I want to use this image that I got from Adobe Stock with my free trial, I can do the same thing I did last time. Change some of my settings on my texture. So the first thing is I'd make it a cube. And then I need to set the mapping to latitude, longitude. And I would always click this fix up edge seams. And I don't really need to worry about the alpha on these because there is no transparencies to my knowledge on these. But when you're doing a skybox, you always switch it from repeat to clamp. And just check your size. Usually it defaults to 2048 as the max size. For a skybox, you're going to want to go bigger than that. 4096 is what I'm going to use and apply it. And then it is converting the file to an equirectangular map that will go on as a cube map. And then we'll plug it in. So it's done. It looks circular, so I know it's finished. And if I select my material again, I see I have a space for it as the cube map, HDR. And I'll go ahead and drag that in. And I don't have it plugged in to my global lighting yet, where it says skybox material. So I gotta pull that material back in again, so that I actually will see it. And again, you saw my lighting change, and you can see it's a very nice looking skybox. Now, once I plug my custom skybox master material in that I actually created for this, then I can experiment with other skyboxes by just selecting that master material. I'm going to close this lighting window and just drag whatever new one I want. As long as I made it into a cube map, I can replace it with whatever other one that I want to put in there. And I'm going to use the one that I got from Blockade Labs. Okay, so we'll go back to that lighting window again, because you might want to adjust how much lighting the skybox affects in your scene, but we don't really have enough in our scene to really know if that's what we want yet. So we'll have to do that later. So I want to start creating a terrain landscape here. And oh, and I wanted to show you one other way, which we will need some things for this terrain landscape that we want to make. You can bring in Megascan objects, and I'll do that again, but the Megascan grass and stuff like that, I don't think that's going to work because grass is actually sprites, and they're like little images, 2D images that face the camera all the time. And the I mean, some of them, sometimes they're mesh. And I think, yeah, some of the Megascans are definitely mesh. But in Unity, the way you do grass usually is with sprites. And that has to be set up specifically for Unity. And so we're going to probably want to use Unity grass rather than bringing in a bunch of mesh models of grass from Megascans. You might want to try that. I mean, you might want some grass to be mesh, but if you want to paint a bunch of it, you're going to want to use the built-in sprite-based grass and trees and things like that. So the trees are actually models, though. So to find those kind of assets, you're going to want to go to your help menu and go to your where is it? Sorry, it's in the window menu. You want to go to your asset store. So your asset store is going to have free assets, just like Unreal had. And so if I choose asset store, it takes me over to the website for it, and I can do a search. I'm going to have to make sure I'm signed in, and it looks like I am signed in. I can check that. And once you're signed in, you can do a search for things like Skybox. You can see that I've searched for that in here. And there are some free skyboxes that you can get. I'm going to search for grass. You could also try procedural grass, but I'm just going to do grass. And down here, I want to filter it according to pricing, and I'm going to click on this box that says free assets, so that I'm only seeing the stuff that's free. And you're going to see that there's some things here that you could download into your project as a package. And you can see that I've actually got one. So there's something called My Assets. And when you download something, like if I click on this one right here, grass flowers pack, I've already made that one of my assets. It's in the sort of the it's not. It is down. Yeah, I downloaded it, and really all I have to do is add it to my project. So if I haven't downloaded it, let's look at what that looks like. Let's say this one right here, Grass and Flowers Pack 1. I haven't downloaded that one yet. Let's click on that one and see what it looks like. And it says add to my assets. So I'm gonna let's go ahead and add that. It's not that big, 72 megabytes. I'll add that to my assets. You're gonna have to accept the terms, and then it's going to tell you it's added to your assets. And then I can open in Unity here. And it'll say open Unity editor. Yes. It's already open. So what it's going to do, since it's already open, since my project's already open, it's going to take me to this package manager. And the package manager is where you see all the stuff that you've added to My Assets. So see the button here, it says My Assets. And I can see that Grass and Flowers Pack 1, which I just did, is there. And I also have the Grass Flowers Pack that I previously downloaded here as well. And so what I can do, if I want to add this to my scene, and there's other ones here like Coconut Palm Tree Pack and Motion Library. These are old ones that I've did before. There's a Skybox series that's here too. All that stuff I got from the Unity Asset Store. So if I want to actually bring it into my scene, then I want to click on it, and let's bring in the one that I had previously. I'll just hit import. And it's going to bring up this. And this is the same kind of thing that came up when we imported the custom standard assets package. So here's where you can choose whether you only want one thing or all the things here. And I'm going to import all of it. And it's going to put it in a folder inside of my assets. So now I have a grass and flowers folder there. I might as well do this other one too. I'm going to download it. And then I'm going to import it. And we'll import it in. Now you don't want to go crazy with this because, again, every time I import something, it's in my scene, so it's made my scene bigger. So when you're going to download something, I mean, look how big it is. Is it worth it? Should you import it to an empty file first and then look at it and see if you like it? And then if you do, import it into your main scene, or do you want to import the whole thing? I don't have much in here yet, so importing a couple of these is not going to be a big deal. And if I decide later on I really don't like it, or I don't want it, or it's not useful to me, I could select the folder here and delete it. And that would remove those assets from my project. So I've got a couple of folders here that are for grass and flowers, and I'll use that on I'll try them out on my terrain. I may use them, I may not use them. I don't know yet. So let's talk about creating the terrain. I'm going to go ahead and do a file, save as, and because this is, I'm going to start a terrain now, I'm going to go ahead and create a not a new project, but a new scene that is going to have the word terrain on it. So let's do Unity terrain. Start. Or, you know, if you think you're going to have multiple ones, you could just do Unity terrain 1. And when I want to save the next stage of it, if there's something risky I'm going to do, or I'm not sure I'm going to like it, then I'll save a Unity terrain 2. And I'm doing it before I actually start the terrain, so that every time I save now, it's going to go into this one instead of my previous one, in case I want to go back to it. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. Okay, so I want to create the terrain. And I've got some things in here. I may use these or I may not use these. Actually, I'm going to just get rid of that rock. I don't really need that right now. The main thing is I have my FPS controller, and I've got this ground plane, but I'm not going to use this ground plane. So I'm going to go ahead and select it and delete it. Now I don't have anything there. If I hit play, I would just fall infinitely down. And what I want to do is I want to go to the plus symbol up in the upper left, click your next to hierarchy, and I'm going to go to 3D object, and I want to create a terrain. And this terrain, when I create it, you see it automatically kind of gets created, and you see it in the inspector, it's positioning it at 0, 0, 0. So the defaults for this terrain, the center is at the corner. It was kind of like the same way in Unreal Engine, that you kind of have to move it if you want the center of the terrain to be the center of your world. But in order to do that, in order to move it, you got to know how big your terrain is. And there's no indication of that here. All it says is scale 1. So what you have is in the terrain components, you have these buttons. And these are what you're going to use when you're working with your terrain. The terrain settings, which is at the far right button and looks like a mountain, that's going to be where the size and everything of your terrain is. So you want to go there first. And you're going to want to sort of scroll through there a little bit to see what the settings are. So most of these settings you're not going to mess with. You're just going to use the defaults. But down here where it says mesh resolution, that tells me how big this terrain is. This one's 1,000 by 1,000. And you know, that might be a good size. If that's the case, then I'm going to move it 500 from its current position. But if I don't want that big, I could set this lower. I could do something like 500 by 500, and we could see what that looks like. It's a little hard to tell because I'm zoomed in, but if I zoom out, you can kind of see what that size is. So it really depends on how big of a map you want. My first-person controller is, if I frame it right there, and you can kind of see it's like basically the size of one of these little grids here. So, or one of those squares in these multiple grids. So, you know, think about what kind of world you want and how big do you need it to be. If you're going to keep it fairly contained, then 500 by 500 will be big enough. If you need more, then you could go up to 700, you could go up to 1,000, you could go bigger than 1,000. Really up to you. If I think about mine, if you want mountains and stuff, maybe you want to go back to like 1,000, because that's going to give you some space to make the mountains. That's going to be a little bit distance to walk to. Like they're not going to be, you walk 50 paces and you'll be at the mountain. It'll actually be further back than that. So I think I do want some mountains in mine. So I think I'm going to go back and put it to the original setting of 1,000 by 1,000. And make sure, go back to the terrain. And I'll reset it back to that and keep that setting for now. And then that means that when I go back to the terrain itself and the positioning, then I'm going to want to move it off of this 0 axis. So if I look at my center here, what I see is positive Z is going this direction, X is going this way, so positive X is going to the left, and Y is going up. So if I want to move it to the right, and positive X is going to the left, then that means I need to put negative 500 in my X. And the same thing, if I want to move the Z which is towards me, that's positive, so it must be negative 500 in Z. And that centers my world, my terrain, which is essentially going to be my world. Okay, so now I've got that working for me. And the other thing that you're going to look at is just, you can see terrain height is set to 600. That's actually not where the terrain is in the world. That's how high you can make your mountains. Like if you want to pull up a huge mountain, 600 is as high as you can go with that. And 600 is going to be pretty high. I don't think any of my mountains are going to be more than 600. So I'm going to leave that there at that height. And the detail resolution, these have to do with the texture maps and the smoothness of the landscape. I think the defaults are fine. There is some stuff for height maps here, but we're not going to use that. You can import a height map to create mountains that are actually accurate, say, to a real mountain range. There is a physical material you can put on your ground. I'm not going to do anything with that right now either. But we might use some of that later. So all of that's fine. I'm going to now switch to paint terrain. Or actually, let's go through and look at what these things have. So the first button here for the terrain is for creating neighboring terrain. So we created 1,000 by 1,000 one-piece terrain, but you can add to that. You can have another 1,000 by 1,000. If you're making a big open world, you might have lots of terrains connected together, and so this is where you would do that, creating neighboring terrains. We're not going to do that. We're going to just use one. It simplifies things. And then the next one is going to be for painting. It's the paint terrain, but it's a little bit deceiving or hard to, it's not particularly intuitive, is that there's actually 4 tools, or actually more than 4 tools, 6 tools in this one button. And you get to them through this drop down that's right below the button. So you can see that I'm actually in the set height one. There's paint textures, there's paint holes, there's stamping, raise and lower, and smooth height. They're all different tools with similar looks, but they do slightly different things. In this set height one, you can set a particular height to set your terrain to. And what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to put like 20 in the height. Set it for world, and I'm going to flatten all. And you notice that my wall that I made of bricks the other day in my first-person controller is gone. And it's gone because I just moved my entire terrain up 20 units. And the reason I did that is because if you don't move it up, you can't paint it down. So if you leave it at 0, then if you use your shift key, you can only paint up. You can paint a mountain, and you can use your shift key to push the mountain down afterwards, but you can't paint a valley, like from your current level. So if you want to be able to actually push down, like if we're making an island, we probably want the edge of that island to be pushed down on the outside, and then we'll do everything pushing up and down in the middle. If we want a lake, we'll push down. So it's good to sometimes come in here at the beginning and just flatten to a higher height than 0. And so that's what we did. And if we look for my my FPS controller, well, it's going to be way lower than the ground now. So I'll just move it up until it pops through my ground. And, 20 could be too much. Maybe I didn't need 20, but that's fine. I can see it's below my ground. It's just below my ground right now. Okay, now it's above my ground. Yeah. So if your plane disappeared, it might have went above your current point of view. So we talked about normals. There are no normals on the bottom of this terrain. So if you look at it from the bottom, it will be transparent. And so if you go under the terrain will disappear. So I think probably your current camera view, wherever it was, is now under the terrain. Yeah. So I've got my FPS controller now above the terrain. Actually, I can see that I've brought it up 22 units, and now it's above because I set the terrain to 20. So now it's above the terrain. And the same thing with my wall that I made. I would need to let's move it up like 25. Since it's a floating wall, that's going to be above the terrain. And it might not be above the terrain when I get through with doing mountains. Mountains are going to make it go up too. But usually what I try to do is in the area that I want to be sort of my main area, I'll leave that close to whatever height is the flat height, and I'll do the mountains out to the sides. And then also I like to know where my center is. So having that, I just centered up the X and Z position of that thing of bricks so that I know that basically that thing of bricks is at the center of my world. And that'll be a reference for me when I'm painting to not mess too much with that area, to do things around it. Okay, so now what I would probably like to do with this terrain before I start painting it is put some kind of texture map on it. So I'm going to go to the terrain again, and I've got the same tool that I want to go into is this terrain, the second button, but I don't want to be on the set height one anymore. I'm going to click onto the drop down, and I'm going to go to paint texture. And I would like to just put some kind of texture, any kind of texture on the main ground, because I'm going to paint lots of other textures, but if you're looking at a checkerboard, it's a little hard to tell what's going on. So I'm going to add a texture to it. And you do it in this paint texture one. And the way you're going to add it is you're going to go to where it says settings, and you're not going to have anything in there right now. Actually, don't go to edit. Go back. Go to edit terrain layers. And the way it's going to create these is in layers. So you're going to create your first layer, and your first layer is going to become the texture for everything. Kind of similar to what happened in Unreal Engine for the first texture that you put on. So I'm going to go to create layer, and then I want to choose some kind of texture. Now, if all we have is the standard assets, then I'm not going to have much here. I do have like some sand. There's some if I type in, if I do a search, for instance, in my assets up here and type in sand, I'm going to find a sand albedo. And so I could start with that. And if I double click that, you're going to see my entire ground become sand. And whether the sand looks good or not is going to kind of depend. If I click on the sand that I just added, I'll see that I can put a diffuse, I can put a normal map, I can put a mask if I have it. And there are some tiling settings here. And it's set to 2x2, which is really very small. And if I want to really tell what's going on, I would hit play, which is going to activate my first-person controller and look around and see if the sand looks okay. And actually, it does kind of look okay. It doesn't look like it's tiling too badly. This is not the texture I'm going to ultimately use, because these ones that come with standard assets, they don't have any normal maps or anything else with them. So they're going to look very flat and boring. You're going to want to replace this. Even if you decide to use sand, you're going to want to replace this with a Megascan texture sand. So I hit escape so I get my cursor back, and I turn play off. And I think that's fine for now. I'm going to replace that anyway, but that's a good start. Now, if I want to go ahead and start working on my real terrain, the one that I want, then I may want to go find the texture that I actually want to use. And so I downloaded a bunch of textures for Megascans into my Quixel bridge. And I've got surfaces here, and these are all just texture maps and normal maps. That's all that a surface is. It doesn't have any model or anything. And so I downloaded a bunch of stuff here, and I could use one on here as my main basic texture. So let's do that. Let's go grab something from Megascan so I have something different. And I do have a sand one for now. I could go ahead and try out a sand one for Megasand and see how much better that looks. So I have this Thai trampled beach sand. And when you download it, you're going to want to make sure that you get an albedo and a normal. And that's all in those download settings that I talked about last time. When you're over here and you are looking through the surfaces, and let's say I want a gravel one, and I decide this one looks pretty cool, maybe I'll use that. So I click on it. I want to make sure that I check, use the lowest resolution, 2K is fine, and then go to your download settings and make sure that you're going to at least have a diffuse and a normal map. I don't think you should have them all checked, because that's just going to bring a bunch of stuff onto your machine for no reason. I would go ahead and turn other ones off. I might want roughness or specular. Actually, sorry, diffuse is not the one you want. Albedo is the one you want. Albedo is the one that Unity uses for its color map, and normal. And I don't think there's going to be any mask. There is a mask here, but I don't think this particular texture is actually going to even have a mask. There is a displacement map, and Unity can do displacements. So that might be interesting, but you're not going to want to put it on everything. That would just slow the system down. And over here, make sure you're, if you're doing a model, that you're using FBX and source asset LOD0. And then over in your export settings, make sure that you are using custom disk export. You put the pathway to where you want it to go. And under textures, that you're using JPEGs. I think JPEGs are probably the, I mean, you could use PNGs too. If there's any transparency, PNG would be important to use, but I don't think these have transparencies. And the other thing is, not really, that's it. Just making sure that you're getting the right textures to download. And so I have these textures here, and that's what I would want to bring in to Unity. And I would just drag them in from here. I mean, you could put them in the folder as I did earlier. That's certainly a valid way of doing it. But if I have a My Materials folder that I've made already, and I could create a Quixel surfaces folder inside of that. If I want to keep track of them so that I don't get them confused, I may want to go ahead and make a folder for, say, Thai trampled sand. That way I don't get it mixed up with some other sand that I'm downloading, because they don't have descriptive names on them. Like, you can't tell by the name. So if I right click and create a folder and call it Thai trampled sand, then I can drag that in here. You can see that I already did that, or I already have that. You might have it too, because I think that got added to the standard assets package that I put up on Moodle. So that's how I think this is actually in here. So everybody actually has this, and we could go back now to the terrain. And the only thing that you want to check is on the regular texture map, the color map, the albedo, make sure that you, I mean, just check the max size. 2048 is actually 2K, so that's correct. Sometimes I set the ISO level up. You can see that this one's at 5. That's just makes it look a little better. And but the main thing you got to change is on the normal map, you've got to change it to be a normal map. This one actually, because we got it from the standard assets, already has that in there. But the ones that you bring in from Megascans is not. It's going to say default, and you're going to need to put it on normal map. Otherwise, it won't behave like a normal map. A normal map is a map that's blue, red, and green. And it looks blue, but there's actually red and green in there. And those things are telling it which way to do the bumpiness to sort of make it look like it's bumpy. Used to be they were bump maps, and bump maps are grayscale, which means it's just black and white. 2 colors to make bumpiness. This one has 3 colors to make bumpiness. Normal maps are more detailed than bump maps, and they make better looking bumpiness. So we want to use normal maps in most cases. And it has to just be set to a normal map. And if you set an ISO level on the color map, set the normal map to the same thing, make sure it's got the same max size, and hit apply. This one doesn't need it because I did it already. And we'll go to the terrain and we'll plug it in. So I'll go ahead and pull the color map in, and then I'll pull the normal map in. And I'm going to want to check it again, because these are not the same maps, and they're not going to look the same from the FPS controller's point of view. You can see this is a much more finer looking sand. So it might actually, I might actually want to increase the tiling size, and it works differently in here. Like the tiling size that you see in the terrain editor So this is a bug. Sometimes when you play to check something and you go back, the buttons won't work. you have to click on something else in your hierarchy and back on the terrain again, and it will refresh that. It's a bug in this version of Unity, unfortunately. So hopefully they fixed it in the recent versions, but 2022 had this bug. Actually, I think 2021 had this bug too, but it's still there, and you got to refresh it. So if I scroll down, there's a normal scale here. That is like the intensity of the normal. If you want it to be more bumpy, have more contrast on the things that it's highlighting and making darker to make it look bumpy, then you're going to want to maybe set that a little higher, but usually you don't go more than 1.5 or something like that. The size, if I set it to like 10 by 10, you can see it makes it bigger. It doesn't make it smaller. I believe that's the opposite to the way it was in Unreal. Like this is 10 by 10. And my wall fell down, which, I guess because it was held up higher. I don't know why it fell down, but you can see that now I can see the sand more from my point of view. I actually think that looks nicer. Even though realistically it might be too big, but it looks good in the game view. Okay, so let's go ahead and start painting. So what I want to do next is I want to paint some of this landscape. I'm going to go ahead and use my right mouse button and my WASD keys and my E and Q, and I'm going to go up, kind of above, maybe go back a little bit. And I want to see, and I might even want to click my green global axis here to look straight down on it and just use my wheel to go out. So here's my entire plane. And I would like to create the outline of my island or my world. I'm going to do an island again. And so what I want is I want to switch in this paint texture. I want to actually raise and lower the terrain. So I'm going to choose that one. And I want to, I'm going to need to set my brush size a lot bigger so I can actually get much more of it painted. And you can see that I have one of these sort of textured brushes on. I don't want to use that for this. I'm going to go and grab maybe even the hard one, the one with the circle with the hard edge, which is the first one, for sort of carving out the, if I want a sloped edge, if I'm doing a beach and I want a sloped edge, then maybe I want to use this one. This is going to soften the effect. So if I'm doing the rough thing, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to make it a little smaller, or not too small. I want to get a lot done quickly. And then I'm going to set my opacity maybe halfway. And I can hold the shift key down. And I'm going to push this down. So I want to push it down. And so I'm pushing the edge down, which below what's going to be the water, to get the shape of my overall island. It's up to me what shape I want to do there. And maybe we need to using the Alt and middle mouse button to drag it. And we'll do this part. The important thing is I don't want to see the edge. Maybe I'll make a little inlet right here. Now, I didn't put it to 100%. So I hit this part again, and it pushed it down probably almost to 100% because I'm at 47. So it hit it another 47 down. I could have put it all the way down. I don't really think it matters. It's going to be under the water anyway. So I can just do Control Z to undo. Oh, I must have done it while I was painting that. So I'll just do this again. And I missed a little edge right here. So I'm just going to hit that. Okay, so now I want to maybe go in and shape the shape of this a little bit more. So I'm going to make my size smaller. Make sure you hold shift down if you're doing something like this. And maybe I want to do like a little inlet here. Maybe I'll make this one look a little bit more natural. Maybe I have mountains out here and some mountains over here. Maybe there's going to be another inlet right here. Okay, so I've made a basic shape that I can work with. I'm happy with that. And I don't fully know what it looks like because I haven't looked at it from the perspective view. If I do want more of a beach area, maybe I want to put the smooth brush on, make it a little bigger, not that big, and go along the edge of the beach and just soften all of this a little bit so you can see it's a little softer there. Maybe pull that down and go along that like a really kind of soft, yeah, like that beachy area. Maybe around here too. Just soften those up a little bit. I can always pull them back up again later on. And then I'll take a look at what I've got, what I did. So if I go down here, I can see that that pushes down in those areas. And if I don't like that that's not far down enough or something, I can always go back over here, pull this back up, and hit shift and push it even further down. So it actually might have went all the way down there. So I'm going to add to this, right? So this is just getting the general shape. And then I want to add some mountains and things. So we'll make my brush smaller and we'll start pulling things up. We can use some of these textured brushes. That's going to make it look nicer. And I can just hit some bumpiness here. Maybe I want a big kind of mountain over here. Whoops. There we go. Maybe I want to switch to a smooth height, which allows me to, actually not smooth height, go back to set height, and I can put in something like maybe 40, 50, something like that, maybe. And I'm not going to flatten it because I don't want to mess up what I already did. I'm going to choose a brush and hold shift down and try to, yeah, get a plateau. So that's actually 50 right there. And so I set it to a certain height, or actually maybe it's 148. I don't remember changing that, but and now I can go back to just my raise and lower, and I could make my brush a little smaller and push that inner part down. And it probably would look better if I actually don't do it all evenly. And then go back and give it some texture on top of that area. And so this is very similar to what we used on in Unreal Engine. I can hold shift down to make a little valley. Some of the procedural things that we used, we don't really have the same exact thing in here. There actually may be some plugins that we could use for that, but I'm not really gonna use that right now. And again, if I want to pull up something in the middle of my lake, like I did on my other one, I can do that too. Okay, so I've got several things here that I put in. I could keep messing with this to build up my world, but let's move on to the texture maps. So I'm gonna go to where I want to check my first person controller and see where it is. So the center of my world is right around there. And I think I would want to put my my structures and stuff maybe over here. So I'm going to go ahead and move my first person controller. I can see it's kind of looking towards the mountains because I've got my I can see the frustum of the camera there, looking towards me. I could rotate it if I wanted to look there. And if we wanted to see what that's seeing, I could open up my FPS controller and click on the camera itself, and then I would see what exactly I'm looking at. So actually that looks pretty good. If I hit play, that looks pretty good. It's a little weird. Guess I'm on a hill. So yeah, I prefer not to be on a hill. This looks flatter up here. So I must have painted a little bit over that area. I'm gonna move this up a little bit. And if I want to, I could go back to the terrain and switch in this tool to smooth height. If I have any harsh stuff that I want to smooth out, this is going to be a smoothing brush basically. And what I could do is go over this area to kind of flatten it out. The smoothing will flatten it out. I could also set my height to 0 under the set height one, or actually not 0, I think it was 20 we set the ground plane at. And see, that flattened that area out. You can see that it actually has an edge there. So that I flattened that area out to 20. And then I can go back and switch to the smooth height tool and just smooth that edge there a little bit. Let's see if that looks better. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of the flat area. You can see the edge there a little bit still. Something weird. Let me frame my controller and see what's going on with it. I think it's actually down in the ground a little bit now. I think that's what my problem is. So I'm gonna zoom, pull my right mouse button down, and okay, so something weird happened there. I'm not sure what. So I must have hit this 2D button here because I was in an orthographic view. I didn't have my global axis. So that was a little weird. All right. So I think that I actually might have messed up my FPS controller. Because I don't see the camera with it anymore. I'm gonna go ahead and save. And let me go ahead and I'm gonna delete this FPS controller and pull in another one. So if you accidentally, because there's two pieces to the FPS controller, if you accidentally are messing with the camera and then you forget and you move it and you change the position of the camera in relation to the parent object, it's a instance, so you can always go back to your standard assets and find the character controllers, first person character, find the prefabs folder and drag it in again. And then frame it to see what it looks like. And what you should see is you should see what I'm seeing now is the collider, which is green, and the camera's there, and the sound is there as well. All of that's there. Now I did lose the shooter script and stuff to do by doing that, but that's okay. I can put that on there really quickly and easily. So it's easier than me trying to figure out what I did to mess up my first person controller. Honestly, I don't know what it. So okay, it's normal. Here's my plane area that I want to use here. And I'll go ahead and paint some textures here. Just going to move this a little closer to my flat area. Okay, so that's good. To paint textures on this, I want to, and oftentimes if I'm going to do this, I might also want to, bring whatever objects. If I have this wall here, I might want to bring it over here as well, so that I can have a reference of something, to see the lighting and to see everything. Lighting is going to be really important for setting up your scene. If this is going to be my main area, then it would probably be a good idea for me to go ahead and also bring my wall over here. And what I could do to do that is I could just look and see where this one is in X and Z, and it's -116, -239. -116, -239. So if I plug that in, 116, -239, then my wall is going to pop over close to where my FPS controller is. Right, so let's just move it right there. And now I also made a cube that I was holding the wall up with. I forgot about it, and I didn't parent it with the wall, so it's not actually with the wall anymore. It's somewhere else in my scene. I'm just going to delete that for now, because I don't really need that. I can always remake that later. And so I see my wall on the ground. It gives me a little bit of a reference, and I also might want to pull my FPS controller a little closer to it. Okay, so there it is. Now, what I might want to do is adjust my lighting so that I can see my mountains and everything a little better. If I switch to my game view, for instance, I can see what the mountains look like, and you know, what the sun looks like, and I can also see where the sun is in my scene. And I might want to go and, you know, adjust that and place it where I think is going to be, actually, that's pretty nice. It's going to be coming over. There's going to be a lake there. Let's put the lake in, also some water. So open up your project assets, standard assets, go find the standard assets folder. And inside of there, there is going to be environment. Open up the environment, and you're going to find some water, a water folder. You have water basic, and you also have, so there's a water basic. It's got a prefabs folder in it. One for daytime, one for nighttime. And then there's also going to be underwater, another prefabs folder, and there's going to be a water pro, and there's a water 4. Let's try the water pro. So there's a water pro daytime. Mine is kind of, I don't know whether to consider mine daytime or nighttime. I'm going to bring in the daytime to see what it looks like. And so I'm going to pull it in. I'm going to go ahead and set it to position 000. So we'll just hit reset on that. And then I want it to really scale up to fit my world. So I know my world is like 1,000 by 1,000. So in X and Z, let's type in, yeah, let's type in 1,000 by 1,000. Now I don't see it, probably because I'm at 0 and in Y. So let's put that up to like 15. And now I see it because I set my ground plane to 20. And now I'm actually seeing some of the water. And I can manually move it to whatever I think is going to be a good spot for that. And I should have water all around now. And we can walk over to the lake there, and you can hold shift down to walk faster. And you can see that I have water. You might want to make it a little higher. Move it up just a little bit more. like that. And then you can try the other waters out too, right? You can try the water basic, you can try the water night, and see what they're going to look like. The water 4, I've used all of them. I don't remember exactly what every one of them looks like, but you know, try them out, bring them in and scale them up to take a look at them. There are components and settings on them that we might want to adjust at some point. But for now, let's just leave it at the defaults. And let's do some painting on the ground plane. So I want to go in and paint some textures onto this ground. I'm going to do that in the terrain editor. In the paint tool where I was at before, which is paint texture. I got a texture there. I'd like to replace that now with the texture that I actually want to use. So I'm going to go and plug that texture in by bringing it in. I have a My Materials folder. And I'm going to make a folder for my glacier texture. Try that one out. Okay, so that's going to be Icelandic glacier. I've got a couple of them here. There's this one, and then there's this one. I'm going to do this one. This is the one I used in the other one. So I really only need the albedo to test this out. In the normal map, drag them in. Make sure you set the normal map to be a normal map. I set the ISO level up a little bit and apply it. And then I'll go ahead and plug that into the terrain here, see what it looks like. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I don't know if that's the exact size that I want, but I'll go ahead and leave it for now. And let's put something else in here. I'd like to have some of the other textures also. So I'll create another folder. This time I'm gonna call it Snowdrift. Double click into it, and I'm gonna pull my Snowdrift texture in. Actually, snow on grass. Well, we'll do Snowdrift and then I'll do snow on grass. Windswept snow, that's actually what I want. Let's pull those in. And so I want to paint this texture now. So I'm going to go to terrain. And what I'm going to do is go to edit terrain layers, create a new layer. It doesn't really matter what you choose here. I can choose really anything. And if you want to name it, you can name it. So I'm going to drag in my snowdrift texture to this. And then what I want to do is just paint with it. You can set your brush size and pretty much all these tools work the same. So I will want to set my map size, but I don't really know what to set that to yet. And I like a lot of these textures that have like the more natural sort of edges and stuff, especially for terrain. So if I want to paint some, say on the top of this mountain over here, some snowdrift textures, set your brush size, set your opacity, and then just try painting a little bit. So I might have some snow on the tops of the peaks here. And let's find some other areas where snow might be. Maybe that's too much. Let's pull my opacity down. Yeah. These are layers. But it's you're painting onto a layer that's mixing with these other layers. And if I want to go back and click on this one and paint that one back again, I can. Like if you're clicking on the different layers to activate them, and it changes down here. So if you want to switch out a texture, you can. If you set all your settings for your texture down here, this is set to 2. That might be why it's not looking great. Let me set my tiling up a little bit. But you know, it's mixing these together based on the settings of your brush down here. So if you're not doing a full opacity, then it's by default going to be mixing it. So if I go and I'll undo that one. Let's put it pretty low. I should see them mixing together here. And then if I go too far, and let's say I really wipe out that one that I had there, I can always go back to this one and paint it back again. All right, so I don't really think of them as layers in that they're one on top of each other. They're on these separate layers that you are choosing, and then you're painting it. To mix them. And I wanted to do the grass one, so let's do a grass one too. What I was trying to So what it's not letting me do, and honestly, I don't remember, I'd have to look it up. It's not letting me rename the layer. So I'm sure there's a way of doing that. I can't remember. So
I had to click it in the project panel. If you like click new layer once, sorry, to the right, yeah, right there. If you click the title of it, and then click it again,
okay,
it let me type. There it is.
so we could say base layer. Or actually, I mean, that really doesn't matter anymore once I start painting on it. This one I would probably name glacier layer. And yeah, or it's really doesn't show up very well, so maybe just glacier would have been better. So great. So I'm gonna create one more. Let's do the grassy snow. Unfortunately, the names don't come in very descriptive from the megascans. It's albedo 2K, SIP, ND, GCA. So it's a little bit hard to deal with finding that in the terrain editor as you're adding it. If they're all named albedo, it's going to come up in a list, but then you'd have to know what that, you'd have to rename it basically, I think. Which we could do. Once I have it named, then I can actually search for it, find it. And one thing that's a little bit unintuitive that is when you create a new, just notice that when you create a new layer, you actually have to, it will not stay selected after you create it. It'll go select the base one again. And so if you start painting, you actually be painting with the base one. So you have to always go back and select it. It's kind of a pain. I think for most textures, you're gonna probably want them to be tiled between 10 and 15. Sometimes you'll go a little less than that, sometimes you might go a little more, but that tends to be about the scaling that you use. Okay, so another thing that you're gonna want to do. So I've got a few textures on here. I'd want to do more. It's gonna look better. The more I do, the better it's gonna look. But then I'm gonna want to start bringing in some Megascan objects, which we did last time. And I'm gonna want to paint some grass and stuff. So and possibly do some trees. So the next two buttons, one is for painting trees and the other one is called paint details, and it's for painting grass. Let me go ahead and do the grass one. So I'm going to switch skip the tree one, go to the details brush, and I'm going to do some grass. So I have this sort of area where I have some grass in my flat area, and I'd like to add some procedural, or really it's sprite grass to it. And so you go into this brush and go to edit details, and you're going to add a grass texture. So they do have a detail mesh, so you might be able to use, I haven't actually tried the Megascans meshes in there. Maybe you could paint Megascan grass, which would actually be pretty cool. Let's take a look at Unity grass. So you'd use that grass texture, and you're going to, it'll say detail texture none. You're going to click into the little dot next to that, and if you want to speed things up, type in grass, and the different grass are going to come up. The standard asset grass is these ones here. They kind of look like just standard types of grass. These ones at the end here are not actually sprite grass. They look like sort of flat graphics or paintings of grass. This is one of them here. It's called grass front. If I grass front 1 albedo alpha, if I double click that, and all these have alphas on them, and they're basically cutouts of grass. And some of them look pretty painterly and sort of artistic, and some of them look more realistic. You are going to want to probably change the color of your grass. This is really bright green. So if you're doing a really summer day and a little bit stylized, you might want that bright green. I probably, for mine, would not want that bright green. I might even want to pull it more towards the greenish yellow. And same thing with the dry colored grass. I probably don't want bright dry colored grass, but more of a darker brown. And then I'll hit add, and then I'll paint some here. And usually, again, I would use one of my textured brushes so that it doesn't all come up in like an even amount. There'll be like holes and stuff in it. And I probably want to pull my target strength down and just try clicking. And I see that I get a few grass pieces. And I'll click over here and I'll get some more. I can pull my target strength up to get more of them. And we'll take a look at them. They're probably too big. They're going to be moving a little bit. Yeah, I think they're too big. I mean, maybe if you were in the swamp, they're going to be very game looking, sort of low res, but when you add a bunch of them, it'll look better. And also if you go back and adjust some of the settings, you can make it look better. So if I go to the one that I have here, double click it, I can open it up. I can set the min max settings for the width and height lower. So I'm going to set this to like 0.3 min height and maybe 1 height. And I can see immediately the ones that I already painted go down. And then probably I don't need that to be so big either. So let's go 0.5 to 1 width as well. And what's going to make it look even better is to add different kinds of grass. In like if it's just one kind and it's sparse, it's really noticeable it's not real. I mean, it's going to have a very stylized look. But if you edit details and you add another grass texture, and let's say we choose the other one that's similar to the one we already put in there, I'll just type in grass again. So that's this one, grass frond 2, albedo alpha. And I already know it's going to be too big. I might want it a little bit bigger than the other one. 0.7 to like 1.2. And the height, let's put that down to 0.5. And again, we'll try 1 or 1.3. And I'll paint a little bit of it where I painted the other ones. And so it's going to add this other grass in there sparsely. Actually, I added the first grass. Let's add some of the second grass in there. And let's take a look at how those look together. Okay, it looks a little better, but I think probably they're still too big. I'd want them to be smaller. Especially for mine. And let's try some of the other ones. So those two grasses come in with the standard assets, but I also brought in that grass and flower stuff, and that's what all those other ones are. So let's just bring in one of those and see what it looks like. So we'll add another grass texture, and we'll go choose something that comes up from those packages. And so you can see there's a lot of flowers and stuff here. Maybe, you know, this is kind of in the Arctic. There's these things are kind of cool. Here's some grass, kind of like the kind of grass that I used inside of my Unreal Engine scene. So let's try some of that. And again, I don't really know how big it is, so it might be better just to go ahead and add it and paint it a little bit and see how it's coming up. It's coming up way too green and bright, so I'm gonna pull that colors down, and I can see them changing in the view. And that's looking better now. Now we've got some of these other grass in there. It's still too big, but it is starting to look a little bit more natural. So we'll set the size down on those. Now, if you haven't saved in a while, go ahead and save because we're building stuff up in memory as we're doing this. Let's add a few. So I've added a few grasses. I'd want to add more. I might want little clusters of certain things some places. And then I want to add some trees. So let's go to the trees one. It's the button to the left of the one we were just using. I'm going to go to edit trees. And I'm going to add a tree. It says, please assign a tree. Well, we haven't chosen one yet. So we pick up here. And we're going to look through and see what trees we have from standard assets and from the tree thing that I had you download. Actually, I don't know. Did we put the tree? Yeah, we did put the tree. That's one. That one's called the big tree. Let's bring a big tree in just to see what it looks like. So we'll choose the big tree. Let's add that. And then you're going to set your tree density is going to be really high. You're probably going to want to pull it down. Brush size might be also very big. You might want to expand this random tree height thing if you want different size trees that have a more variety. You might want to pull it down depending on how big the tree ends up being. And then just try clicking down and see what you get. You can hold shift on any of these things to remove. And okay, I'm just going to do one tree right there, and maybe I'll do there's a color variation thing which will create some differences on the color as well. I'm going to click over here and do another one. All right, so I got two big trees there. And let's go add another tree. This time, I'm going to get this conifer. Add it. And I think I want a few more of those than the big trees. Let's just click and see what we get. All right, that's a lot of trees. I'm going to Control Z undo that and pull the height down because I think they're too tall. And maybe I'll pull the density down a little bit too. That's better. That looks better. So now I have some variety in my trees. And it looks a little nicer. Maybe we have some trees over here. Maybe too many, so I'm going to hold the shift key down and maybe remove some of those. And then I'll take a look at it. All right, so I've got some trees around my perimeter. I kind of like that. Maybe it's too many. I might take some of them away, but it's a good start. And I can bring in some Megascan rocks and other things and put it around, and that'll start to look more and more natural. Now, one thing that I can do, you notice that my grass is moving with the wind, but my trees are not. So one thing, you can go up to your plus symbol with where the hierarchy is, and you can add under 3D objects a wind zone. And so I just added a wind zone, and you probably noticed the trees move a little bit. Let's go ahead, and I want to see where that wind zone is. I'm not exactly sure where it got created. There it is. So I want to actually place that wind zone. I'm going to pull it up a little bit. Looks like it got created underneath my water. Pretty far away from where I want to be. So let's see. I'm going to select my wall, -112, -248. So now the wind zone should be, yeah, close to where I'm putting my trees. Let's go ahead and pull it up a little bit and move it right there. You can see the trees moving around. You're going to want to set this down. It's going to be too much. I'm going to put, let's put it down to 0.5 instead of 1. And turbulence, I'm going to set that down to maybe 0.2. And then I'll hit play again, and I'll see if my trees are moving. Yeah, got some movement on my trees. I don't remember if you can do that. Let's go look at the grass and just see if there's anything there for it. Let's just open up there's nothing here for it. And nothing here for it either. So if there is something and it's not in these two places, then there might be a global sprite grass setting that we can adjust, but I would have to look that up to see if I could find that. I would be surprised if it isn't somewhere in there. I'm just not off the top of my head sure. Okay, so we can bring in Megascan objects. The other thing that you can do is I'm going to bring in a Megascan object because what I want to do is I want to do a pickup. We're running out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and go over that real quick here. So I have downloaded the object that I used as a pickup, collectible object from Megascan. So I used the skull. And so I downloaded the skull object and I'm going to import it into my scene so that I can make it into my pickup object here. And let's just frame the FPS controller and I'll make it like right here, and then I need to make it into a prefab. So to begin with, what I'm going to do is bring in the object itself. And this would be the same if I'm doing a boulder or anything. The things that you want, if you're making a model, not a surface, but a model. I have a My Models folder that I made that I put the rock into. And so I'll go ahead and do that here as well. I want to pull the FBX model in. So find the one that says FBX, pull it in as a model. Go select it. You can check the scale factor. I usually would use the defaults one until you find out whether it's too big or too small. But the most important thing is to find, if you need it to be like a rock or something, some kind of object in your environment that you might walk on, you want to find the generate colliders and turn that on. If I want it to be a pickup object, I probably don't want to turn that on because the pickup object I'm not going to want to collide into. So I would not generate colliders for this object. And for materials, again, I'm going to put a material on this, but I usually set this to use external materials and a local materials folder, and that just allows me to sort of create my material in that folder. So for this case, I mean, you may want to create it right there too, or you could put it in the materials folder. Unapplied setting. Okay. When you make any changes in here, you got to hit the apply button. It's a little bit unintuitive, and but here's where I would create my material. It created a default material for me. So if I want to, I could just go and rename this, and I'll call it Skull Gold, because I want to put gold on it. Material, enter. And then I'm just going to give it a gold color. Some kind of goldish type of color. And I'm gonna pull the metallic all the way up. And the smoothness, I'm also gonna wanna pull up a certain amount if I want it to look like gold. And then after you do that, go ahead and apply it to your model. So I'll go back to where the model is, select it. Um, and actually, you're going to need to drag it into the scene. So I would go ahead and drag the object into the scene, so it's part of your scene. And it's been doing this where it actually creates the object as a child to what looks like just an empty. When we bring in the Megascan object, that's fine as long as you kind of know that this is actually where the object is being moved from. And this has the mesh and the material on it. And because I changed the material that was the default material, it automatically ended up pointing it on the object here. So if I frame it, it's already a gold object. So I think it looks a little small. I'm going to do like 1.5 as the scale on this one, so it's a little bigger. And I'm going to want to also move it up. So I'm actually going to move that from the parent object up a little bit so I can more easily see it and choose it. I'm going to create a light, add a light, point light. And I'm going to want that point light, we'll call it skull light. I'm going to want that point light to be child to the skull. So I'm going to drag it onto the parent object of the skull, and then I'm going to reset its transforms so it moves right to where that parent object is. And then I'm going to move it down a little bit. And to make it look a little better, I'm going to make it a gold light. And I can see it's affecting the ground a little bit. You have a range on this light. Now in Unity, you can type in a number or you can hover over the name of the component and it brings up these arrows and you can click and drag to increase or decrease depending on whether you drag left or right. So it's a virtual slider. And so if I want this to be brighter, you can see as I pull it to the right, it's getting brighter. And then there's that's the range, that's how far it's going. And then there's the intensity as well. So for this, I probably don't want it to be too bright, a little bit more than 1. And I don't want this to cast shadows, so I'm not going to turn that on. You could put a flare on it, I'm not going to. Let's see what that looks like in the game view. Okay, so it looks like a skull, floating skull. And so that looks okay. I might want to mess with the colors a little bit, but it's fine. What I want to do is I'm going to continue adding stuff to this. let's say I want to add some particles to it. So we downloaded the standard assets. There is a particle systems folder. Inside of it, it has some prefabs. There's things like fireworks and afterburner, dust storms, various things that you could try out. One of the things is just regular fire. There's a fire mobile. I guess that's the main one here. Thought there was another one. Oh, fire complex. I'm going to use that one. So if I want to use that prefab, I can drag it in. Again, make it child to the skull object, reset its transforms so that it's going to be sitting right on top of it. When you make something child and you reset, it always pops it on top of it. And then I'm going to just pull it down a little bit. And let's see what that looks like. Okay, it's a little low, but it's not bad. So I'm going to pull it up a little bit, put it right below it. And then what I'm going to do is take this whole thing that I've been making here, and I want to make it into a prefab. So I'm going to go to where I have my prefabs folder. And I've got a couple of prefabs in there already. I'm going to pull this skull into it, the parent object, down into my prefabs folder. Would you like to create a prefab variant from the existing prefab skull LOD? And I'm going to say yes. Okay, it turns blue, so I know this is a prefab now. And if you want to open a prefab, if I double click the prefab, it brings me into the prefab. So now I'm looking at the prefab. And so in a way, that's very much like a blueprint actor inside of Unreal. And if you want to go back out to the game, again, you click this little arrow next to the prefab that you've opened up, and it's going to take you back to the game. All right, so this prefab's now the master object, and I'm going to want to put one of my scripts on this. So we have in the My Scripts folder, I have the object pickup script. I'm going to select that and open it. You can double click it to open it as well. We're going to have to wait until next time to really go over all of these scripts. But let me go ahead and put this on here. What you can see is it's got all the stuff that I talked about last time. The name of the script in the class here is object pickup. And it's got a rotation speed as a variable. It's a public float variable, which means you can change it in the inspector. And it's set to 100. And that's being plugged in down here in update, which runs continuously. And it's a transform.rotate command. So this transform.rotate command using dot syntax, this is the input to that command within parentheses here. It's looking for a vector 3, which is going to tell you you need a float X, float Y, and float Z as inputs. So this is saying take this object's rotation. X is going to be 0, meaning it's not going to rotate at all. Y, it's going to multiply the rotation speed number, which is 100, times time dot delta time, which is actually the game loop time. And then Z is going to be 0 as well. So it's only rotating it in Y. And then we're also going to make a trigger, add a trigger to this, this object, a collider, which is going to be turned on as a trigger that it's going to activate whenever it intersects with something tagged player. And that's going to produce the pickup effect, where it's going to destroy the object and look like you picked it up. It's also going to send a message to the thing that you collided with, which is the player, and we're going to have a script that has a pickup procedure on that to recognize that you picked up something. Okay, so that's in the other script that we're going to add to the player. So a couple of things here. One, we need to have our player controller tag player. By default, it is not. If you go back and you find your player controller, FPS controller, you're going to need to look in the top of the inspector where it says tag, and you're going to switch it from untagged to player. It's a built-in tag that you use on your main player. And I'm just going to turn that on for my player controller. That way, that script will work. Then what I'm going to do is go and find my skull object. And I'm going to put the script on it. So we have a couple of pieces here. I think I'm going to put that script on the mesh itself rather than the group node parent, because I think that that's just going to work a little better. Otherwise, it's going to rotate everything. I don't think we need to have everything rotated here. So if I want this to happen on the prefab, then I need to go to my prefabs, open up the prefab, go down into it and find the mesh, add component, scripts, and I'm going to add that script that I just did, object pickup. It doesn't have any inputs other than the speed. And I'll just leave 100 to see what that looks like to begin with. So that's there now. Let's go back out of here. Click the little arrow over here. And if I hit play, we see that it's spinning now. It's got the fire, it's got the spinning. Now, if I walk to it, I've been tagged player. It's not going to work actually right now, so I'm just not going to do it. I didn't add the collider. There's no collider on it. So I got to go back to the skull again. Let's go back to the prefab, open it up. I'm going to select the mesh again, and I'm going to add a collider. Add component, physics, box collider. And I'm going to move it around, move it down a little bit, maybe scale it a little bit. I think it probably should be bigger. There it is. So I want it to be a little bigger. Okay, it's actually scaling my model. That I don't want. Undo that. So I'm gonna and it moved my model too. So I'm not going to do that. I want to just scale it down here. It's set to 0.6, 0.4, so it actually scaled to fit around the model. I'm just going to set that all to 1, 1, 1. And I'm not doing it with the manipulator. I'm doing it over here where it says size on the box collider. That way it's not going to mess with the size of my head, my skull. Because using the manipulator was actually scaling the whole model. Don't want to do that. I also don't want to move the whole model. So if you need to move it, there's center here, and you can slide the Y to move it down if it's too high. Okay, so now that's a pretty good area for that to be in. Did everything over here. And then the most important thing is this is going to be a trigger. So you got to turn on is trigger. That's not on by default. After you do that and you go back out, if you hit play, if I walk over there, you see it disappears. I picked it up. Now, the problem is everything didn't disappear. So, it got rid of the model, but it didn't get rid of the parent and the fire. So that's a problem with where I place that script. All right, I should have actually put it on the skull, or I need to change the script because the script is to destroy the object that it is on and not its parent and everything else that might be associated with it. So I should have actually probably put it up here and put the collider there. That would have been the way to go there. So what I can do is I can just, if you do something where, oh, well, that's the wrong thing, let's click over here and remove that component. We don't need that box collider on there. We'll get rid of it. And let's also remove the pickup script. And now what I'm going to do is go put it on the skull instead. So I'll go ahead and add physics, box collider. And I see that, let's orbit around a little bit. It's actually not bad where it's placed. I might want to make it a little bigger. Let's do 2 by 2 by 2 just to make it easy to pick up. I may change that later on. But to make it a little tighter, but for now that's fine. And then I'm going to add the component scripts, and we'll add the object pickup script again. Now it's on the parent object. And let's go ahead and hit play. Walk over. Okay. I ran into it. So I know what the problem is. I didn't turn trigger on. I'll go back and look, and yeah, trigger didn't get turned on. So if trigger is not on, it's a collider. You'll run into it. Trigger's on, you'll walk right through it. So let's try it again. And that time worked. Okay, so we're going to add other stuff like sound and all of that, but that's actually in another script that this script calls on the player. And the script is called Pickup Manager And it's actually gonna be, actually, no, it's called, pickup managers for the GUI, sorry. The one that is on the player is inventory pickup. And this one goes on the first person controller, and it's going to have this is the procedure that other script we just put on calls. I'm getting an error message because this script is not on there yet. But this script is going to actually play some kind of sound when I pick up and turn on the HUD. So we have some more things to do with the pickup stuff. We got to create some GUI for the HUD to tell me how many things I've collected. We've got to have it register to a global variable that is on the player script here and the inventory script. And then we also have to make sure everything's connected together. So sorry, I ran out of time today. What I want you to do is build up your landscape with the terrain editor, bringing in Megascans, and try to create a scene that either looks similar to your Unreal Engine one that you created, or something new that maybe you've decided to do something a little different this time, and that's fine. But I do want you're going to put all three of the games that you've done on your final poster. And so if they have some kind of connection or progression, it's gonna look better on the poster, and you'll be able to talk about sort of how things were similar or different between the programs and stuff like that. If you come up with some completely different thing than you did in the last one, then it's going to be hard to connect those together. So I would do something that has some similarity. Okay, work on that for the weekend. Try to build up your environment, and then we'll get heavily into the scripting on Monday. Have a good weekend. Hey. Yeah, we need to grade those this weekend.
Yeah.
So I think Friday would be a good time to talk about that.
Okay, I can do that.
So, yeah, and I think people are gonna have more questions when we get into this a little bit more because of the scripting. So
Yeah.
if you're having, I think it will be useful to make as part of your hours for the week to have a session like office hours on Friday, like you were doing before. I think that's good.
Yeah, I can just drop over the green back.
Yeah.
But I'm just continuing. Yeah, look over the script there, very basic and simple. And I just noted this a conflict of complying with, I just import all of your starter file into my own. And I think the shooter is kind of overlap into another one in the starter and so.
No, if for some reason there's in the starter assets, the scripts were coming in, then don't import the scripts.
Yeah.
Or delete the ones actually that came from the starter assets, because
Yeah,
those
yeah,
were
I was-
old. And the newer ones are the ones that I uploaded to Moodle.
Okay.
So you should like,
I imported everything and then there was like.
yeah, because
Naming.
because I didn't realize that when I did the starter assets, that it was pulling a dependency to the scripts folders.
Okay.
And it put those in the starter assets. So they came in with the starter assets. We did this in class. I deleted all of them
Mhm.
and we imported the scripts again. And then you shouldn't get that. That's the only error that I think you get. There's other errors that sometimes come up. Like this is one just because we haven't finished putting the scripts on yet, but there might be some other warnings and stuff, but there's no like
Yeah, this.
compiler errors that.
Yeah, there's always one,
Yeah,
but as long as there's no regret.
yeah. No, that red is just because we haven't put the players, the inventory script on the player yet.
Yeah, I'll see you on Friday then.
Yeah, let's, I'm having, because it's advising time, my schedule, has certain amount of advising in it now. So I'm gonna have to, see when I'm not doing any advising meetings to do that. Probably Friday morning will work. I don't think we have any meetings on Friday morning this week. Wait, I have an early meeting, but it should be over by 10 o'clock.
Anyway, I don't have any class on Friday. So.
Okay. So yeah, maybe late morning or something like that. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
No problem. Bye.
Bye.
Do you want us to upload or graduate additional writing assignments to that same submission folder on Worldbuilding?
Mostly I want to have that for the final poster.
Okay.
So if you're writing stuff up, if you want me to look at it, yeah, you could upload it and I could take a look at it. I was thinking about actually, I'm not gonna wait until the end to have the poster due.
Okay.
I'm gonna actually Monday, I'll give out the poster template and talk about it, and I'll make like the part about the first game and the second game, like Fortnite and Unreal. Like do as a rough draft,
Okay.
and you could add your stuff then
That works.
to the poster.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so that for the graduate ones, you have like some particular topic that you're exploring in these game projects. Is not just the basic. And the other students also had to like do something extra, but for the graduate students, it should have more meaning than just doing something extra. It should have some conceptual basis and some references to papers or something, not just a tutorial, but to like some kind of research topic.
Okay.
So, do you have something in mind that you're already working on?
At the moment, no, but I think I can quickly put that together. But I'll let you know though, and I'll see if I can submit some writing to that file, maybe you look at it.
Yeah, some kind of conceptual idea that you're interested in, like, I mean, the thing you did with the Fortnite was, I mean, it was pretty different than the other one, but they have some things in common.
Yeah.
That maybe might be of interest to you. It could be about aesthetics, it could be about dynamics, it could be about game design frameworks, it could be about a certain technical aspect. Um, so in game studies, there's a lot of conceptual theory behind the frameworks as well as some of the concepts like flow and so you can find papers on that and reference them. So it's kind of what is an interesting topic to you related to game design or game theory?
Definitely more on the mechanics dynamic side over aesthetics. I could easily see myself going into flow. I think I would just need a night to run through some ideas, honestly.
Yeah.
Just to make sure I pick the right one and something that I'm like 100% interested in,
Okay,
but I'll try to let you know.
yeah, think about it and maybe we can talk and brainstorm a little bit.
Agree. Thank you.
Yep.